never get it right.
The other way.
Oh my God, I thought that was all for me.
Shall we sit? Shall we sit down?
Not even a hurricane can keep away the John Taylor fans. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm Liza Fromer. We're here to celebrate John's in the pleasure group. So we're going to chat for a bit. He's going to read a little bit, and then we're going to take some questions from you. Oh my God, this is what it's like to be a rock star. It's awesome.
So I had them flown in specially.
Wow. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I've actually never experienced, just walking down here and seeing that reaction, that passionate feeling. How did you deal with that the first time that hit you? That's like a thunderbolt.
Well, the first time that hit us is actually the first scene in the book. And that was in 1981, the summer of 1981. I mean, it's pretty extreme. This thing is, where's that technical guy? Where's that technical guy? 'Cause he said to me, you've just got to forget these things are on your head. And right now, all I can think about is this thing's on my head. Is there any way we can kind of adjust them?
I think there's a million people who would love to help you.
I'm always a little distressed. I feel like Kate Bush when I got one of these things.
Here he is.
I'm not sure, it's just, is there... Like a pair of sunglasses. Okay. Oh, that's better. That's much better.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh, you can relax. Okay.
So we were talking about how you, and it is the first scene in the book, which is amazing. How you deal with that? So you, how old were you? How far had Duran Duran come when you first, the curtains opened or whatever happened in that?
Well, we put out Planet Earth. That came out in January of '81, and then we started doing. The record company, the second single that they chose was a flop. And right away, the vultures were circling, saying, "Oh, Duran Duran, a one-hit wonder," and we hadn't even released our first album. So we started doing photos for the sort of teen girl press. In the UK, we have Jackie and Diana, my guy, mates. I don't know what you have here, and Tiger Beat.
Tiger Beat, Sassy.
Well, I just thought, well, whatever it takes to get the music over. And we started doing photos for those magazines, and then we started getting fan mail. And actually, that was a lot of fun. We would get together at the Rum Run, and if we weren't working, we'd get together and we'd start answering fan mail, and that was kind of fun. We started, forging, alliances, sort of making friends in a way with fans that were out there. And then we went back on the road that July, and we knew that the interest in the band was gaining, but we had no idea that we'd gotten that kind of, somehow, I don't know what we did, but somehow we inspired that kind of feeling in people, and yes, and it's still going strong. And it's quite healthy, isn't it, to let off steam like that,
It must be kind of addictive.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, actually, because I was talking to a lady from the Globe's Mail today, and she was saying, well, she was talking to me about performing, and I was telling her how important performing is to me. That, I love going in the studio, I love writing songs, but for me the end game is to get back out on stage so I can play those songs. It's always about building a show so I get to perform. And she said, well, do you think you're addicted to the adulation? And I was like, interesting, that was one addiction I didn't think I had. But maybe, who knows, maybe it is. I mean, I like doing it whether, I'm quite happy to do it also with everybody just sort of sitting quietly as well. I don't need that kind of adulation, but I do love to perform.
Let's talk a little bit about the beginning of the book, your early days. It sounds like it's quite idyllic, and a lot of times if you read rock biographies or even actors' biographies, it's not that way, and they're trying to escape something. You were an only child, great parents.
Yeah, I mean, a number of people have said to me, you were so lucky, I kind of hate you. I kind of hate that upbringing that you had. It was so perfect. Well, I think I wanted to show I mean, part of the book's in three parts, you know, and the first part, I suppose you could call Becoming John, you know, and that, the inspiration for that was losing my dad, passed away, coming up to 3 years ago, and, you know, after he went, I sold the house that I'd grown up in. I lost the connection with the street and the neighborhood that had been such a strong part of me, and it was thinking about, there's no one from my parents' generation left alive, and I just thought that was just kind of extraordinary, and I was so moved by it, and the memory of them seemed to be receding like at the speed of light, and I wanted to slow down that sense of loss, so I started writing about it, and I started thinking about creating some kind of a memorial to them. Not because their lives were any more special than any of our parents, but you know, I'm an artist, so I get to do that. You know, and usually I get to write songs about it because I'm an artist. But it just didn't feel. Well, I don't know. Maybe it could have been an album. I love you know, the album that Lou Reed and John Cale did for Andy Warhol, and I was thinking maybe it would be something like that. But then I was approached at the beginning of last year with the idea of writing a book, and I thought, well, okay, well maybe that's it. So I'm not quite sure I answered your question. I forget.
You were not messed up as a child.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And the more that I thought about it, I mean, obviously, it doesn't matter what your experience is. You are going to get messed up in some way, you know. And I was, you know, and I had. You know, I was an only child, and my mother, you know, she stopped working when she got pregnant. So I had her complete and, you know, devoted attention, which was absolute heaven. But, you know, try living up to that. You know, I keep trying to tell my wife, look, this is how we do it. You know, you are entirely devoted to me. Your life revolves around mine. You live for my every breath. Because that, you know, it really worked for me when I was 3. But she's not, she says it's different now. Those days are gone.
And that was where you met Nick Rhodes.
Well, I met Nick when I was, I think I was 12 or 13, and we had a mutual friend. Nick and I didn't go to the same school, but by that point I was Music Man, and you know, that was my primary.
What were you listening to?
Bowie, Roxy, Rod Stewart, sort of like the cool glam music. And a friend of mine, David Twist, he went to school he went to Nick's school, and he said, you guys, you know, you've got to meet this kid. He lives on the neighborhood. Nick was 2 years younger than me. I mean, I was young, but Nick was, you know, like even younger. But he's, yeah, and we kind of, you know, we connected right away, and we bonded over Mick Ronson. Mick Ronson was Bowie's guitar player, and you know, and he was a very, very interesting musician in his own right. And it just felt like Bowie was the big star that everybody was into, so we kind of like, yeah, we like the sideman, you know, and I kind of, that became a bit of a theme actually, and it's one of the chapters in the book.
You talk about that, about being a sideman, and you know, you think about rock stars and they're out there and big personalities, but that doesn't sound like necessarily, you wanted to recede a little bit.
Well, I just couldn't quite make that leap in my own imagination to put myself at the front of the stage with a microphone stand. I just couldn't do that, and you know, and most singers, like whether it's Simon or Timberlake, you know, they were at least in the choir at school. You know what I mean? They've at least sung publicly. I never did that, you know. But I wanted to be a part of that thing, that production. You know, and when I started to go to see bands, you know, I would just marvel at this. I mean, everything about it, you know. The PA system, the lights, you know, the drum risers, everything. And I started to, I wrote this scene out in the book about Roxy Music, and going to see Roxy Music, and they were playing a theatre about the size of the Massey Hall, you know, and they were doing a weekend, and I went in, actually I was with Nick, and we went into the city just to hang out. It was a Saturday afternoon, and we met a couple of kids, a couple of guys, I should say, that were older than us. And they said, hey, you know, they're doing a sound check right now. So we went down the side of the theatre, and we could hear lots of them playing. And this was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had no idea that bands did that. And there was about 10 kids hanging around, listening, and they were like Birmingham's biggest Roxy Music fans. And they were all dressed and decked out in whatever Roxy Music fans wore back then. And then the band came out and got into a limo. And the limo took off across town. And, and I remember it very clearly, although Nick would probably remember it very differently. But I remember somebody saying, they're staying at the Holiday Inn. I know a shortcut. And that 12 of us went charging across the city.
Chasing Brian Ferry.
Can anybody in this room relate to that kind of behavior? So you talked about that adulation at the very beginning, and so I feel like we've always had a very, very strong connection with our fans, and I think one of the reasons is I know what it's like to be a fan, and I wanted to put that in the book. I wanted to give that up because so many people have given to us, and created those, really exciting moments, and we were there, and I think I also had to get to an age where, I don't mind admitting it at this point. There's nothing. It doesn't feel uncool to me. I was looking through the George Harrison book. Actually, it was. I was looking through the enhanced ebook of the George Harrison book, which obviously he didn't write, but it was written about him. When the documentary came out, and there were his autograph books in there. Signed to George, Love, Little Richard, and all that sort of thing. What, if George Harrison can admit to it, I can fucking admit to it.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. There's always got to be someone that inspired someone else.
Yeah, and it's still there, and it's still like, for me, keeping the flames burning, keeping the fire burning. That's what it's all about, because when we're going to go back in the studio in the spring, and with Mark Ronson again, and you're going to go back in, and it's kind of like climbing a creative mountain. You've done it before, but still, it's like, okay, because you want it to be great. You don't just want to go in and just do any old thing. You want to make something great, and to do that, I feel like I have to go in armed with a lot of inspiration. So, I have to throw a lot of music on the fire, to keep myself excited, and so that I really, really want to. What's that? Thank you, darling. Thank you.
Where does the inspiration come from? Does it still come from music? Does it come from family?
Yeah, I think it does come from music, ultimately. I think you've got to believe, or I've got to believe, in the power of music. I mean, music, gave me an identity. Without it, I don't know what I would have done. So I'm an apostle, and I'm a believer. I think that music. I mean, my mother, I got her to blame. I realised that, in my family, pop stars were more important than politicians. Nobody talked about politicians. No one was interested in politics in my house. But get my mom started on Rod Stewart's haircut, or Brian Ferry's latest single, and she could get really excited about that. Well, cut two. Frankly, I'm trying to get excited in the elections, but I'm just a little bit more interested in the Roxy Music box set, or whatever it is. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just believe. I also know. That music is, the power of music. It's the greatest antidepressants. I mean, if you've got your music lined up properly, you don't need antidepressants. Music can get you through everything. It's a very, very powerful form, and it's worth investing a lot of time and energy in.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? There's almost nothing that, whether it's a smell or something you read, there's almost nothing that will inspire you as much as music, which I think is why we're all here, because I suspect that we're all the same, where your music was the soundtrack of all of our growing up.
Yeah.
And so to this day, as I'm reading your book and you're mentioning a song, every single lyric goes through my head. I know, and I'm sure it's the same for everybody here. It's all there. You're mentioning your parents a lot, and you said something a few minutes ago about becoming John, which is really quite literal, that you were named Nigel.
Right.
And if you can imagine, like you painted a sort of a metamorphosis for you, that it was that caterpillar to butterfly thing when you decided that you were putting that aside
Right.
and turning into John.
Well, again, a lacking imagination a little bit, because I just couldn't see Nigel, you know, on the top of Hot Shot. And you know, there were a couple of good reasons for that. One, I mean, I remember, you know, Monty Python's Flying Circus. I was a big fan of Monty Python. And they were every Thursday night, you know, the show would be on. And one night, they had a sketch called Great Twits of History. And the way that I remember it is that every twit in the sketch, his name was Nigel. And the next day at school was the worst fucking day of my life. Now, funnily enough, when I, you know, fact-checking, what's this thing with fact-checking? Okay, now, this is not a, you know, presidential debate, this book is, so don't feel that you need to fact-check it quite so scrupulously, but when the book came out, a friend of mine who's also a writer in Germany wrote to me and said, I think you've got something wrong here, John. He said, that Monty Python sketch, he said, they weren't all named Nigel. In fact, I think the winning twit's name was Eric, and Nigel came second. I was like, get a life.
Yeah. Called poetic license.
But you know, that's how I remember it, so, you know.
Have the other band members read it?
Roger has read it, but Roger's really the only guy who reads rock bios, and he loved it. And I took a copy of the book to Nick. This is what I do when I'm asked this question. I took the first hardback off the press to Nick because I felt he needed to have it. He'd already told me that he wasn't going to read it because he didn't want it to get in the way of his own memories, particularly if he wanted to write his own book at one time. But I said, so here it is anyway. You don't have to read it, but here's one for the archive. So Nick goes, smells good, doesn't it? Johnny, it's a good smelling book. He then went on to comment on, oh, I love that you used that picture. He went on to comment about some of the pictures. But you know, it's they're the last people that should read the book. They were there, and you know, their perceptions of events would be so different to mine. You know, because you know, you realise that you know, from the outside looking in, you probably think we're so alike. You know, but we're so different. You know, I mean, take a random selection of 5 girls or 5 guys that are here in the audience. You'd think that they're the same age, they're like, one's a Gemini, one's a Pisces, you know, but I mean, actually the 5 of us were quite different, and I think that, you know, that we're shaped by the point, you know, what I learned was how I was shaped by my own experience, you know, as indeed we all are. But when I faced fame in the first 5 years of the band, I was facing it based on the experience that I had as an only child, as a Roman Catholic, you know, who, you know, whatever my experience was, which I talk about, but I wasn't. I had a lot of yin, but little yang, or whatever it was. There was, you know, and Simon, who is like the eldest of 3 brothers. You know, I was an only child, and then we're all different. You know, we all bring very different experiences. But then that's what makes a team. Shall we read something?
I was just going to say, would you like to read some of it?
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. Bear with me. We're going to read. I'm going to read chapter 1. Hey Jude. Yes, this little guy here. Oh, he's very cute. He's on the screen as we speak. Okay. I'm 4 years old, confident and shy, hair blonder than it would be in my teen years. In shorts and sandals, a young prince of the neighborhood, the South Birmingham suburb of Hollywood. How proud. 10 o'clock in the morning on any given weekday in 1964, and I've stepped down off the porch and wait, kicking at the grooved concrete driveway, watching as Mom pulls the front door closed, locks it up and puts the key in her handbag. She puts the handbag in the shopping bag, and off we go. Left off the drive and up the hill that is the street on which we live, Simon Road. Our house is number 34, one up from where the road ends. We walk together along the pavement, counting down, 32, 30, 28. On the left side of the street are all the even-numbered, semi-detached houses, single buildings designed to function as 2 separate homes, ours is twinned with number 36. Across the street, the odd-numbered houses are detached, each building a single dwelling, all much larger than ours, and so are the back gardens, which are long and tree-filled and bordered at the bottom by a stream. The driveways are slicker too, with space for more than one car. I hold Mum's hand, remembering the Beatles song that is so often on the radio as the incline gets steeper. We reach the crest of the hill, where Simon Road meets Douglas Road, and turn right. We pass a 12-foot-high holly bush, the only evidence I have found suggests where the estate got its name. We march on, crossing Hollywood Lane in front of Gay Hill Golf Club, an establishment that will assume mythical proportions in my imagination as a venue for wife-swapping parties. Not that anyone in my family ever set foot in the place, and there was no truth in the rumour. Cars flash by at 20 or even 30 miles an hour. We make it to Highter's Lane, another main artery of the neighbourhood, which must be taken if you're visiting the old Birmingham of nans and aunts and uncles, recreational parks and bowling greens. It gets traversed a lot by the Taylor family at weekends. It must also be used by mother and son if we are to reach our destination today, St. Jude's Parish Church. All this walking, we've been doing it together for as long as I can remember. Mum doesn't drive and never will. At first I'd be in my pushchair, but now I'm old enough. We walk, side by side, which must have come as a relief to Mum. There's no complaining from me, it just is and ever shall be. Amen. I would go to many beautiful or inspiring churches when I was older. St. Patrick's on Fifth Avenue, St. Peter's in Rome, Notre Dame de Paris. But St. Jude's on Glenavon Road was the most pragmatic people's church anywhere in the First World. Built in the post-World War II years, St. Jude's was intended as a temporary structure, not meant to last more than a few years. It's coming up on 20 now and yawning with cold air and aching joints. Single story, with windows every 6 feet along its length and a roof of corrugated iron. Its crude purity enhanced the idea that St. Jude's faithful have about being the chosen ones. Why else would we gather together in this cold, ugly place unless it was an absolute certainty that it would benefit from it? A communal sense of readiness sends us through the small lobby where, on raw wooden tables, literature is offered. Some for sale, some for free. Textbooks, Bibles, songbooks, and tour t-shirts. And other merchandise. Rosaries, crucifixes, and pendants of St. Jude's, the patron saint of hopeless cases, really. On into the nave, where there is a smell of sweat and yesterday's incense. It's usually cool in here, sometimes warm, but never hot. A tall red-headed man plays a rickety-looking organ, quietly piping sweet music that is barely there. Eno would call it ambient. Candles burn lazily with a holy scent. On the strike of 11, the service begins. The priest enters smartly, followed by a pair of young men in white robes. The priest's team, his posse, one of whom swings a silver chalice from which more incense issues. The air in the church needs a good cleansing before the good father can breathe it. He wears elaborate clothing, a robe of green and gold silk with a red cross on his back. Beneath the cloak, ankle-length, turned-up trousers reveal the black socks and black brogues of any other working man. The music surges in volume and we all stand. The red-haired man leads us in a song we know well, "The Lord is my shepherd." I open the hymnal to read the words. I like this one, but like Mum, I'm too embarrassed to sing out loud. I wish I could, I just don't. But I like the feeling of togetherness that comes from everyone in the room singing the same words. Once the song is over, the priest walks to the dais. He glances down at his Bible, opens his hands wide and says, "Let us pray." Thank you.
And as the story unfolds, you talk a lot about being out on the road and the loneliness that came along with that, and the ways that you tried to solve that lonely problem.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, you turned to drugs at one point, and you're very open about that. Where do you think that came from? When, with all the adulation again, was it isolating?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, part of the process of this book was trying to understand that. I mean, fame is very addictive. Also, talking about addictions, I mean, the kind of attention that you start getting when you're at the centre of that kind of attention, that kind of energy, and I found it very hard to turn off from. You know, I started drinking, I started drugging. I actually feel like the drugs helped me become John Taylor that, you know, I needed to be. You know, I watched an interview with me taken the week that Planet Earth came out, and I was watching that. I thought, this guy's never going to make it. He's so inside, he's so insular, confident, and clearly, like, you know, believing in his band, but so painful, you know, in yielding up answers to the question. But then, you know, 6 months later, I was on some Tiswas or some Saturday morning TV show, like The Life and Soul of the Party. Well, what was different? Well, you know, what was different was I started dipping into, you know, various, you know, drugs, and it just, I feel like, I don't know that I could have become, you know, that guy. I feel like I needed a bit of a help. So, you know, the drugs and alcohol kind of helped that. But then, of course, you know, I couldn't control it. You know, then it took control of me.
And how long did that go on?
It went on for quite a while, actually. I mean, it wasn't until, I mean, it kind of, it escalated as the kind of chaos stuff, as the whole career, you know, got going. By the time that that single Silver tour, you know, it was really starting to get in the way of my, work was starting to get in the way of my partying. And, you know, but like at no point, I mean, it was too out of control to take a break. You know, I watched the rest of the guys, you know, got married. Andy got married, Roger got married, Simon got married, you know, and they all said, I want a life. You know, I don't mind doing this, you know, I like being in this band, but I also want a life. Me, all I wanted to do, I just wanted the party to just keep going, you know, so I was like, well, let's find another project, let's find another, you know, until I just sort of hit a wall. But, you know, I mean, I went through the whole, the reunion. When I say the reunion, I mean the Notorious reunion. Around about that time, actually, when we picked up the pieces, Simon, Nick, and I, it was clear that that it was going to be tough, because up until A View to a Kill, everything we touched had turned to gold, you know, and we were just on the, we were I don't know, this word zeitgeist, you know, where you don't have to think about being cool, you just are, you know, you're just on top of it, you're so in tune with what is happening, you know, the currents in fashion and society, whatever you're into, that what you're doing is just right, you know. In our first 5 years of our albums were just right, but then we kind of took a break and we stepped back, and then when the three of us came back together, the train was kind of over there. That's how it felt to me. And then we were playing, it felt like we were playing catch up, and we were kind of 2 men down. But you know, there was good and there was bad to it. But there was a feeling, there was a different feeling in the second half of the 80s. And you know, politics had become a part, you know, Live Aid changed the way everybody had to present themselves a little bit differently, that kind of decadence, the colourful aspect of the 80s sort of toned itself down, and then, you know, artists like both Prince and Madonna, they were both very sober, you know, they ran sober tours, and suddenly it became obvious that, like, you know, getting high wasn't cool anymore. Whereas, you know, at the end of the 70s, as I came of age, getting high was really cool.
Right. Did the other guys in the band come to you, or what was the moment where you thought, this has got to change? Did they address it with you?
No, I don't think they ever really did. I mean, it was just, I mean, I just wanted to be the best, you know, band member I could be, you know, so I thought, what have I got to do? You know, maybe I've got to try, you know, not drinking. I mean, one of the things I learned was, I thought I could just stop taking drugs, but then I realized pretty quickly that if I drank, I'd want to take drugs. So that didn't work. So then it was like, Christ, I've got to stop drinking as well. Well, doing that by yourself is really, really difficult. I would bump along, I'd get a couple of months, and then bang, I'd go out again, big time. My Amanda, my first wife, she got pregnant, and that was like a really good excuse to stop drinking. You know, so we kind of like, we did that, but it was they call it, in recovery, they call it white knuckling it, you know, which is when you're trying to stop doing something, but you don't really have a program, you don't really have either anybody that you're sharing with, you know, like Weight Watchers, for instance. I mean, that really works because you're in it with a bunch of other people and you're comparing notes, you're not in your head all the time. You know, you're sharing the experience of what you're going through. So, you know, the first, you know, for years I just tried to get on top of it in my own head, so to speak. And it just didn't work. I mean, it wasn't until, where were we? What were we doing? I think we were halfway through Thank You, I think. And that's when, you know, I hit bottom. Because I was just so miserable, basically. And then I was fortunate enough to meet somebody in London that suggested I should go to rehab.
And that was it. You went in, right? It was like
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I called Nick actually. I said, "I met this woman tonight. She thinks I'm one of those Betty Ford types." He's like, "Really? Really? Is it that bad a problem?" Well, because rarely do people understand, you know, from the outside. You know, because from the outside, it didn't seem like I had that big a problem. But
was it part of no one wanting to say no to the rock star?
Oh, we're way beyond that point.
Oh, okay.
We've gone way. We're now like, you know, I'm in my 30s now. I'm supposed to be a grown up at this point.
Right.
You know, so it's not, you know, that idea of being a rock star has been and gone a long time ago. You know, at this point, it's like in order to have a sort of valid existence, you know, I needed to be a husband, a father to my young daughter. I needed to be able to pay the bills on time. I needed to be able to do what basically everybody else learns to do in their early 20s that I never really figured out. And I was still, you know, I've kind of caught between two, you know, because you get this sort of suspended adolescence when you get gifted a career like that, you know. And you know, when all my peers were sort of learning how to do life on life's terms in their early 20s, I was just, you know, somebody was taking care of it for me.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, you talk about how you would get the notes under your door where it's like, you are in Chicago.
Yeah.
It is Friday.
Yeah, there's enabling for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it wouldn't matter, so it wouldn't really matter how bad the hangover was. It was very clear what town you were in.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder, do we have the microphones around to take a couple of questions from the audience?
Yeah, right there.
I'm sure there's, okay, there we go.
We have a question right here, Dad. Hi, John.
Hi.
My question is, I've just started reading the book, and I'm astonished how good your memory is when you're very young. Because I can't tell you what my first day of school was like. And so I'm wondering, like, how is it that you're able to remember that?
Right, so I think there's two answers to that. One is, you know, thank God for like wiki timeline, and you know, I mean, for it's only the middle part of the book that deals with the first few years of the band, which is very much, you know, a calendar of, you know, events. I mean, it was important to get the timing right on that. And you know, you can go online, and I had these boxes and boxes of memorabilia that I was actually able to check. I had all the old schedules and the itineraries that I could see. The first part of the book, it wasn't even that important. You know, it's not even that important to get specific dates, really. They're just impressions. I mean, the other thing is, you know, if you can't remember the date exactly, kind of make it up. You know, I feel that like the important thing is to keep the sense of how things happen. You know, I'm not that tied to specifics in that sense. But you know, for me, it was about trying to capture spirit. You know, and you know, and once I knew I wanted to go for this 3-part thing, which was like growing up, beginning of the band, you know, and then, you know, working through, you know, becoming a grown-up, getting, you know, dealing with my parents' death. I knew it was about getting the spirit of those 3 ideas. More about that than about getting very definite dates.
Do you have a question?
Thanks.
Hi, John.
Hi.
One word that comes to mind when you think of each member of the band.
Oh God.
Good question.
That's the word. Nick, God. Simon, God. Roger, drum God. Yeah. I got out of that one,
I
didn't
like that question. Well done. Yeah, nicely answered as well.
Hey John, back here.
Hi.
Thrilled to see you.
Thanks.
I wonder, I'm sure you don't want to say anything bad about Andy, and not that you ever would, but can you, what's the story with reportage? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think, you know, that was the Reportage was the album that we started after Astronaut, and we recorded it. We rented a house in San Francisco, actually, Marin County. In fact, it was Andre Agassi's house, and we set up the equipment, and we recorded a lot of songs quite quickly. Really, the feeling was that it was quite strong. We took it to the record company, and the record company were going through some kind of trauma, and they weren't sure it was the right album for us to put out at the time. They said, well, what about if you did one or two songs? Are there any producers that you'd like to work with? So we said, well, at that time, we liked the idea of working with Timbaland. It took them about 6 months to get a session with Timbaland on the books. So we just kind of, trod water, waiting. By the time the studio session came around, our relationship with Andy kind of degenerated. And Andy, the thing was, I think if he was to be really honest, Andy doesn't travel well. He doesn't really like being on the road. He's a homebody, and he's happy to, work out of his studio. He's got a big family. And I think that the commitment to the band, when we got back together for the reunion, it was essentially like a one-album tour cycle that we were committing to. But of course, the four of us, the addicts, the four of us, we never wanted to stop. We're so happy, we don't ever want it to stop. But I think with Andy, he was like, it stopped being fun for him. I think, the most disappointing, the timing, that he never got to play in those Timbaland sessions. Because that really would have been something. I felt like we went into those sessions with Timbaland really weakened, not having Andy there. Once we realised he wasn't going to be a part of it, then we were able to sort of adjust, and then we went into that sort of electro direction for Red Carpet Massacre, and and then Dom stepped in. And Dom's a fantastic guitar player. He brings a great energy to the band. Thanks.
We have a question right here.
Hi,
Sean.
Where are you? Hi.
I'm wondering about the process of writing. Was it painful? Was it therapeutic for you? And how long did it take you to?
It was very painful, but fortunately the therapy was really good. There was. I think once I committed to the idea of doing it, I really got into it, and there was one or two key scenes that I thought, if I can get those scenes right, I'll have an interesting book. One of them was the scene with Sting, for instance, when I'm a kid and I'm seeing the police play. Well, that wasn't the kind of story that you're going to tell in a band interview. It would have just fallen flat, and it would have been wasted. I'd held that story back for you. One day I'm going to present that story just right. The night where I'm really trashed, it was a night like tonight, actually. It was a serious storm going on in New York City. And I'm in my 27th floor apartment. And it's just one of those Quentin Tarantino nights, It's like, a little bit Scarface, a really crazy night. But what do I do at 8 o'clock in the morning? Am I calling for hookers? No. I'm calling Father Cassidy. Because I'm calling my parish priest, who I haven't spoken to in 3 years, because that's where my head was at. That's how sick and twisted I was. And I thought, wow, that was such a crazy, crazy night. If I could get that down on paper and communicate that could be a good scene. I haven't seen or read that before. So I got a few scenes like that, and they became the cornerstones of the book. And then I started working with Tom Sykes, who was just fantastic. And we would get together. He would come and stay with me at my house, and we had the dining table, and he had his computer on one side, and I had mine on the other. And we would bounce things back and forth. It was very much like working with a producer. I came to him with like the raw demos, which were my raw chapters, and then he would produce them, saying I think we need some backing vocals right here, and maybe an orchestra. This one needs the orchestra. But it was we had a good working relationship, and we just kept the thing moving.
Question over here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm taking pictures for everyone who can't see behind me.
Hi. Oh, hi.
So my question for you is, sorry, I'm incredibly nervous. You had your exchange with Sting, and then later on you sort of mentioned that he had said that he wished he had written Ordinary World, and you sort of left it at that. So are there any songs that you wish you would have written?
Oh. Well, actually, I'll tell you where I went to. I went to my old school about a month ago, and the children, the choir, they sang that Coldplay song. Is it Fix? Is it called Fix Me?
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I wish I'd written that. Yeah, I like that.
All right, we have a question back here.
Hi, John. 4 years ago, Headley made a video called Never Too Late. Now, how do you feel about them carbon copying the video for Rio down to the frame? And how do you feel about your work being transfused to the newer generation?
No, I feel good about it. I mean, I think it's. I think for the most part, what do they say? You know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You know, we were talking the other night about, I guess Madonna's on tour at the moment, and she plays Express Yourself, and then she plays Born This Way. You know, which was like, I mean, I remember when I heard Born This Way, and I thought, what is she doing? You know, so clearly. But you know, that word homage goes a long way. But no, I mean, I'm very happy when people take our work and, you know, and do whatever they like to do with it. Very.
Have you seen the video?
No. No, my thinking was, I don't know what she's talking about. Just go with it. Just go with it.
They owe you money.
Fantastic. We have a question right over here.
Hi. So we've got author, actor, singer-songwriter, sort of. Well, you haven't recorded since I Do What I Do. What's next that you'd like to try?
Fact check. Fact check.
So what's next? And I'll find that song.
I don't know. I could use a vacation actually. I'm kind of ready. The band have been on hiatus since the tour, since we had to cancel the shows here, and everybody else just went, whoop, you know. And I've been doing this, so I'm kind of ready to get bored for a little while actually. Get bored so that I'm really hungry to get back in the studio and really want to make a great record. I think that's, you know, back to basics.
We have a question over
What?
here.
When do you ever sleep?
Oh God, I had the most delicious nap before I came here. No, not the Four Seasons.
Nice try, though.
Yeah.
Very nice.
A for effort.
All right, we have a question over here.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I'm Kat, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming. My questions, two questions, hope you don't mind. First is, what's your favorite song to play live, and what's the hardest song to play live?
Oh, okay. Well, favorite song. Honestly, all the greatest hits are fun to play. You know, and we've stopped fighting the hits. You know, we're not playing Rio anymore. You know, we're not, just because people want to hear it. You know, but actually, there's a reason why people want to hear the great songs. They're really well put together. You know, the parts are fun, and I find that I have a great time playing all the obvious hits. The hardest song to play, well, funnily enough, when we, I forget which tour it was. It could have been within the last few years, and we decided we wanted to play a couple of songs off Seven and the Ragged Tiger that we'd never played before. And Shadows on Your Side is one of my favourite songs from that album, but I could not, for the life of me, figure out what the hell I was playing. And I must have mentioned it in some interview, and this bassist, fan, calls himself a fan, you know, created a tutorial just for me and posted it on YouTube. I felt such a loser. So I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to figure that damn thing out. But isn't that amazing, you know? And he came to me, I did a bassist convention 2 weeks ago, a very small group of people. But that was in Los Angeles, and the guy came to me, he said, I was the guy that put that tutorial. I said, you can take that smug look off your face.
All right, well, I know we could listen all night, but we want everyone to get a chance to meet you, so let's take 2 more questions, and we have one right here.
Hi, John.
Hi.
What was the most difficult part of the book to write?
Well, I knew there were going to be drugs in it. You know, because I wanted to get to like the recovery bit. You know, it was very important to me to have that happy ending, the clarity that comes from the happy ending. But you know, then I knew I was going to have to go down. You know, I was going to have to share with the reader a little bit of some of the seedier. I mean, it's not as bad. Trust me, it's not like what it could have been. You know, but I knew I was going to have to commit to, you know, saying yes, I did this and this. You know, and I felt it was kind of like losing your virginity almost. You know, I thought once I go public with this, there's no turning back. You know, it's like letting your hair go grey. You know, which of course we're trying to avoid for as long as possible. But you know, once you do it, you kind of can't go back to dyeing the hair. So yeah, I think acknowledging, you know, which reminds me, I need to get it done. But yeah, I mean, it was just putting. I think the drugs. Yeah.
All right, and we have our final question right here.
Grey hair is good, by the way, John.
It's so Richard Gere.
Okay. By the way, I love you. We all do. Would love to know, John, because we are all getting a little gray here. What's on John Taylor's bucket list?
Well, lately I've been thinking about getting into boxing. It's like nobody's ever really punched me squarely in the face, and for some strange reason I'm feeling like I'd like to get in a ring with somebody and do that. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I should do it with girls. That could work. I mean, travel. I'd like to go. Oh boy, I mean, there are places to go. I've never driven around a racetrack at extremely high speeds, but you know, I kind of want to live for a very long time. So I've kind of taken. What else have I been thinking about doing recently? While I was in Europe on the last trip, I decided I wanted to start tap dancing. I was in a meeting somewhere, and in the next room there was a tap dance class going on, and I thought to myself, I fucking love tap dancing. There's just something, when you hear like 12 people go, it's just great. I called Gila. I said, honey, I think I want to do tap dancing class. Lead balloon. I just got this feeling that tap dance class equal divorce. So that's not going to happen. But it's still on my very private bucket list.
John, did you want to read any more?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to read one more. This is from the, you know, I decided to finish the book on what was a very,
spoiler alert!
I can assure you we are at this part. We are at this part. Coachella. Does anybody, do you all know Coachella? Big festival in California. So we performed at Coachella on the 17th of April of last year. Behind the stage, to the side of the ramp, our band has gathered. We've stepped off the pair of golf carts that have brought us the half-mile from our dressing room in battery-powered silence. The air is warm and electric blue. We acknowledge each other without words, using nods and smiles, backslaps and other gestures of encouragement. Instincts surge. Every other concern falls away. Since 1981, we've released our songs on vinyl, cassette tape, CD, digital audio tape, mini disc, ringtones, MP3, streaming and download for purchase or rental. I've long since learned to relax and cease worrying about how the music finds its way to your ears. Just play, just write. As long as I keep those calluses on my fingertips hard and maintain an enthusiasm for making music, I'll be happy most of the time. We've come a long way together to get to this holy place, Coachella, and a lot has changed in the last 30 years. Cell phones, computers, SUVs, nose hair trimmers, supplements, Propecia, paperless itineraries, in-room humidifiers, steam rooms, saunas and gyms, pre-show massage, Twitter, Spotify and Amazon, touring with 3,000 songs in my pocket. I need to change that. It's 30,000 now. I've got songs in my pocket and 30 books on an iPad. Therapy by Skype. great coffee everywhere. Another difference is out there, where there are just as many men as women in the audience tonight. At day's end, my job is to be a catalyst for connectivity, to help bring people closer together, men and women, girls and boys. That's what the music has done for me. What hasn't changed are the notes that run up and down the neck of the bass, and the feeling that hits you when one note rubs against another in a way that sets the hair up on the back of your neck, and the sound of the crowd, and the feeling of adrenaline that charges through my body when I hear it, holding that 4-string machine gun on stage, less than 6 feet away from you. Simon is running through his vocal warm-ups, which we so often rib him about. Nick has a plastic cup in his left hand and is taking sips from it, now reaching his right hand upward to flash a snapshot on his camera. We all fiddle with our in-ear monitors, trying the volume, listening for interference. A photographer from Spin magazine wants to take a picture. We assemble reluctantly, everyone just wanting to get on with the show. It's an outdoor festival, so tour manager Craig will not get to give his usual cue to take the house lights down. Tonight, that is one of God's jobs, and what a job of it he is doing. A glittering bauble of sunlight fights to stay above the horizon. A full moon appears, a late-coming VIP that takes a seat above the lighting gantry at 11 o'clock high. Nature presents for us a better light show than any human could ever have created. A perfect breeze causes my Buddha scarf to flutter. All the signs are good. We walk together up the ramp. The stage is set, the electronics are primed, the audience ready. Nick walks on first, in a black net snood borrowed from Lady Gaga. He walks across the stage and onto his riser, puts down his camera and touches the Andromeda synthesizer, from which issues forth a sample of the exact sound he used to begin our first single, Planet Earth, written and recorded over 30 years ago. My heart is pounding. There is no better time than this. When I'm about to take the stage and the future belongs to me, this is what the moment feels like as I walk out onto the stage one more time. Roger's drums kick in. An 8-bar count and I'm in with him. The galloping groove that started it all for me. 30,000 California kids, eyes and teeth smiling, cameras and cell phones popping, a million tiny seductions all at once. And the music never sounded better. Thank you.